Okay, so we are live for everyone. So just a minute and we'll just get started. So one of the things we really want to do well is to start meetups on time and finish on time. So it's almost 11 a.m. Singapore time and we are on time for this one also. So thank you so much everyone for joining in. I'm Jatin. I'm one of the co-founder of eChai Network. I'm based in Ahmedabad, India, but we have chapters in 15 countries in 25 global cities where physically we host a lot of good engaging meetups. After COVID-19, a lot of those things that we do have moved online, and hopefully, probably in another 6 months, 9 months, we could get started with our physical one. But during this lockdown, we kind of got started with a very interesting thing, which we call it a CoRise Summit, where idea is to invite people from all our chapters together and come out with an interesting content or a series of programs around that. So in August, we had done a CoRise Summit, which was more of a global version. Like we had friends from 20 countries who joined us. And after that, we got to meet Chris, who's based in Philippines with Vadwani Foundation, and Cheryl with an incubator in Philippines. So we thought, can we do it something very specific to SEA regions? Like there are a lot of interesting stories coming out from SEA region, and from outside also a lot of people would want to expand their business in SEA. So idea is that like, can we do something interesting around that? So this CoRise SEA Summit is a result of that direction. And thank you so much, everyone. Again, we'll just so the format is we have 5 awesome speakers who will tell their stories. But Chris and Cheryl, just 20-25 minute introduction of Chris, what you do at Vadwani and why what is Vadwani Foundation.
5 minutes. Dion will do that for the One Foundation. I'll just
Okay,
listen.
Dion, if you can speak up, if you can show your video also.
Go, Dion.
Hi, bro.
Yeah, you can introduce
Yes,
already.
Dion, you are on the spotlight. Everyone is just waiting for you, Dion.
Go,
Oh,
Dion.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Milan.
And
wait,
Okay,
wait.
Dion, you already took your 10 seconds. You were supposed to
Okay,
introduce.
okay, okay, okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Dion Dewa Barata, and I'm a senior program manager from Watwani Foundation. Watwani Foundation is a non-profit organization with the primary mission of accelerating economic development by driving job creation through large-scale initiative in entrepreneurship. It's good to be here and meet you all in this wonderful event. We hope this wonderful event can be a catalyst for further collaboration. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dion. And wherever you're watching this conversation, probably we'll be sharing the Vadwani Foundation's links. So in case if you want to explore more, you can go there. Cheryl, your 20 seconds starts now. You'll have to unmute yourself, Cheryl.
Muted.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Cheryl Arenas, the project lead of the Technological Institute of the Philippines Nurture Innovation Technology Revolution Office, or in short, TIP Nitro. So we are a university-based technology business incubator funded by the Department of Science and Technology of the Philippines. So we we help ideas of students and our incubators to have that opportunity bolstered, optimized to be ready for commercialization. So we offer speaker series like this and workshop to support the budding entrepreneurs in our community. We also offer mentorship, opportunity for partnership to support our incubators, but also the whole TIP community. And we are sector agnostic. Currently, our incubators are in the field of clean technology, aggregator, furniture industry, software as a service, financial technology, and healthcare. I hope we can develop collaboration with through this CoRise Summit, Southeast Asia Summit. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cheryl. And just a couple of things, friends who are live with us on Zoom, in case if you have any question, you can ask in the comments. So towards the second half of the session, we'll take some of those questions. And those of you who are watching on social media, you can comment over there. We'll have somebody from our team just relay those questions to us. So one of the things we keep telling people that, we bring in good speakers. The most important thing about bringing good speakers is to speakers accepting those invites. So we have, so Tulika, Dhruv, Milan, Shia, and Anupama, thank you so much for accepting the invite to being part of this program and committing your 1 or 2 hours for engaging with all the aspiring founders. So we'll just get started with our session. So basically the format is each speaker will speak for 2-3 minutes about what they do, what their business is. It gives you context about what they are doing, and then we'll have a lot many questions about growth or growth from Singapore about that. So if this was a physical event, I would have asked everybody to clap like this. But Zoom webinar has this interesting feature where you can send emojis. So those of you watching us live on Zoom, you can send across some emojis. So we feel a little more excited, creates more energy. And thank you so much, everyone, again. Tulika, if you can briefly introduce your background and what SnapHand does.
Absolutely. So, good morning, everyone. And for those of you joining from India, it's really early morning, so appreciate you guys coming on board. My name is Tulika Tripathi, and I'm the founder and CEO of SnapHunt. So, SnapHunt's a smart hiring platform which basically helps employers find the right talent really, really quickly, and job seekers find the right job. Now, it's an area which I'm really passionate about because I fundamentally believe that hiring is in the top 3 challenges of most businesses, and it should not be so difficult. So I actually ended up in hiring 16 years ago by mistake. So I came into a company called Michael Page as a candidate. I was in banking before that, and ended up staying as a recruiter. And what made me passionate about hiring is that I realized that people are at the heart of any business. The heaviest manufacturing, the deepest R&D business, it's all about people. By helping companies find the right person at the right time, we could influence their business outcomes. Similarly, having been married now twice, I can tell you that the right job is better for your quality of life than the right husband. So, people do spend a lot of time at work. And if we could help people find the right job, we could really impact their lives. And I think SnapHunt was just a natural progression because I felt that you could use technology to be able to deliver those outcomes at scale. So what do? We really help people find jobs and companies find talent in a snap. And for the rest, you have to actually just try it firsthand to experience how we do that.
Awesome. And what's your Singapore story? Like when you started from Singapore, or what is that context?
So I mean, I've lived and grown around the world. I first came to Singapore in 2008 for 3 years as MD of Michael Page Singapore. So it's a market I know well. And I later started up, recruitment businesses in other parts of Asia. So Hong Kong, China, India, Malaysia, etc. And then when it came to starting up my startup, I was living in Hong Kong at that time. I decided to come back to Singapore for a multitude of reasons to set up the startup here. I think firstly, because I think it's a fantastic gateway into Southeast Asia and, South Asia. So I really wanted to be here as a hub to grow the business here. The second is it's really easy to set up a business here, and you have a really good, talented and skilled English-speaking workforce here to really start up your business, and plus great access to capital as well. So for a number of reasons, we decided to start up here. So I came back here in 2017, end of 2017 to start up SnapHunt here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tulika. And if this was a physical event, we would have done this, everyone. Dhruv, if you can briefly tell us about your background, your company Saif, and your Singapore story.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks Jatin for having me over, and good to meet the fellow panelists, and thanks everyone who's dialing in for this call. Most of my career was a banker. Actually most of my career was in Hong Kong, where I started working with UBS. I was a trader. Really enjoyed it. Was moving up the ranks relatively quickly. It was all very exciting, but then a part of me also realized, like, is this something that I really want to do for the rest of my life? And I actually had some incredible bosses and some people that I worked with, but it's just that I probably was not on page with that lifestyle because it was after a point, helping the 0.1% become the 0.01% of the world in some ways. So essentially what happened was in about 2015, I quit banking and I joined an early stage company in Delhi for about 2 years, which is called Growthers, and saw that company really grow out, through its course. But in that process, I think what happened was I realized that I had actually a lot of institutional financial knowledge, and then of course, with the startup experience for a few years, I also had a lot of experience in building a very successful consumer tech company, and essentially that was probably the genesis of Saif, where I thought that I'm in a way a bit privileged that I can combine institutional level of finance with a mass reach out consumer product, and that is what we're building at Saif. So Saif essentially is it's MAS licensed, which, as some of you might know, is the Monetary Authority of Singapore. It's an MAS licensed digital wealth manager. Our goal is basically to give institutional level of wealth and financial advice and service to a much broader audience in a much more cost effective and a personalized way. Now, conventionally, if you have $100 million, you can get this at banks like UBS. But most of us don't have $100 million. And if you have $100 million and you're on this call, I'm grateful. I don't know why you're on this call also, but the reality is that because there is this rising middle class across the region, and there isn't much ways to actually allocate or how do they manage their wealth. When you combine that with decreasing interest rates, increasing inflation, etc., I think it's a very important thing that people need to address. And I think sooner or later, it's not an optional. It's something that is almost a necessity for a future tomorrow. So that's the principle of what we do at SAIF. We are headquartered and based out of Singapore, but we have customers now for over 25 plus countries. My Singapore story actually started probably the same time like Tulika. Like in 2008, I think was the first time. I think MBS was not even built at that point. It was still like undergoing its reclamation. But from thereafter, because I was working at UBS and we have a very big operation in Singapore, bang in the city center, I used to come here probably 8-10 times a year. When I was building SAIF, I was debating between which region to do it, and Hong Kong was one option given I'm a Hong Kong PR. But I actually felt Singapore ecosystem as well as the regulators very pro fintech, and that's the reason why, as you see, a lot of companies are setting up their base out here. And that was the reason why I chose Singapore. Now I've been here probably for about a little over 3 years, and that's a short summary of my background.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Dhruv.
Thank you.
Anupama is the founder of 3 companies. So Anupama,
co-founder at 3 companies, right? So yeah, just a quick word about me. So I have actually dual interests in fashion and in technology. So I went to IIT Delhi, studied chemical engineering by mistake. Actually, I wanted textiles, but you know how it is. Like if your rank in IIT is a little bit higher, you are getting other is a little bit higher. You are getting. I wanted to get into fashion, so I thought let me get a formal education. So after IIT, I went to NIFT, which is the National Institute of Fashion Technology in India, and I did a kind of MBA in fashion. It's called a merchandising and marketing course, right? And after that, I worked in fashion for a course, right? And in India, building the brand there, handling product, demand planning, IT. And then after 6-7 years, there was an opportunity to shift to Singapore to roll out SAP across the region. So I went straight from planning and product job into a technology role because I understood the company and the processes and the business processes. And 7-8 years, I was at Levi's Asia Pacific and rolling out SAP for the first 3 years, and then rolling out demand planning and business analytics, standard processes and improving efficiencies for the brand. And just before I was ending, I want to do my own thing, and maybe it'll get too late if I spend some more time, so I quit. And the very next month after leaving Levi's, I co-founded Anna Rain with a couple of European designers because I was very passionate, and I still am, about body positivity for women. So we do a lot of wrap-inspired styles, so wrap dresses and so on. So the body shape is not really important. It's more the person's personality shining through and women getting confidence. And then a couple of years down the line, because we had an identified need in retail and in fashion that analytics is all number-based and it was not visual. So we actually got together with 3 other people, me and my husband and 3 more co-founders, and we founded Slicer. So Slicer is a visual analytics platform, and it's used by many fashion and lifestyle companies in the region. We basically mash up images and all kinds of data from various systems to give you like a kind of a visual view. So you're not just looking at numbers, but you're looking at products. And how that helps is that people are making much better decisions. They're working on the cloud on a standard platform. It's not like some files in somebody's folders and so on. So there's a single version of truth. So even if a company has a business intelligence system, we slap on top of that because we bring in the data and the visual component. So it's been great. And Integrated Retail is my husband's company. He's been doing this for quite a long time. I help him with some of the key accounts, and we have very fancy brand names as customers as well. So yeah, it's just delivering value to our customers and consumers.
awesome. Thank you so much, Anupama. Milan is the CEO at IVS, iVideoSmart. Milan, if you can tell us a little more about you and your Singapore story.
Yeah, sure. So I'm originally German, but I've lived in New Zealand since I was 15. I went there to study when I was 15, 16 for a year student exchange, and then never returned to Germany, only for holiday. And eventually, so I studied design, but during my studies, I started to make some money with flipping secondhand Japanese cars like Subarus and Toyotas. And I come from a family of, my father's a scientist, my mom's an artist, so there's no entrepreneurs in my family, they're all academics. And I never really thought of myself as an entrepreneur. But I guess the car hustle, I made like a good 6-digit amount when I was 19 during uni, and that kind of made me realize like, wow, you know, why should I go and work for a design agency and make 50K a year when I can make so much more money just flipping stuff? And then I did go to a design agency, and I worked at Saatchi & Saatchi and Ogilvy and all the big glamorous agencies, which is, you know, cool because you get to have a drink at 4 p.m. every day, and there's lots of beautiful, cool people there, but you still get worked like 12, 14 hours, and you work for the man, and your ceiling is pretty low for your earning potential. And so that kind of made me think that I'm probably an entrepreneur, but I didn't want to be a secondhand car salesman all my life. And so I started to sort of get involved in various startups at the beginning as a designer, then so in a product co-founder role, and eventually started another company called Poster, which we sort of semi-exited last year, or at least I left last year. And so that brought me to Singapore. So we raised about $8 million, and some of that was from Singaporean investors. And essentially what we were doing is we were putting advertising on Android lock screens, on the lock screen. And if you accept, you get free data. So up to like 1 gigabyte per month for free from Singtel, Telkomsel, O2 Germany. So we're in about 7 countries, about 3 million registered users. And then I was looking for the next thing to do. And very lucky for me, Peng from Monks Hill, which is one of the prominent VCs here in Singapore, who I've sort of known for a while and has been a mentor for me, asked me if I could help with this video company, which was doing very, very well on the supply side. So that, to maybe one step back, essentially what IVS is imagine it like B2B YouTube. So we're a video player, like actually what you're looking at right now is a video player, right? The frame in which the video plays. So that's what we are, as well as the hosting of video files, as well as the streaming, so the CDN, the entire infrastructure. But it's not for well, we do some live streaming as well, but it's not for conferencing. It's really purely for publishers and now also broadcasters. So we partner with, in Southeast Asia, we are probably number 1 independent. Definitely in Indonesia, we're the number 1. So we have something like 1.2 billion pages per month where we have our player on, and serve about 120 million unique users. And so when I joined the company, I can't take too much credit for that volume. They already had that sorted before I joined, but they were sort of struggling a little bit with monetizing this efficiently. And because of my experience in ad tech, Peng sort of thought that I could be a good person to lead this. So over this year, I've been sort of restructuring the team a little bit, removing some of the elements of the business that weren't making enough money or weren't very promising in terms of revenue, and just really focus down on a much more singular focus on the OVP, on the online video player, and the monetization of it. And yeah, so it's been going pretty well. We grew about 300% this year during COVID, so we're all pretty happy. Now the question is if or how we do it again next year. Because the whole 3 times 3x, 2 times 2x to get you to 100 million revenue, right? That's the idea. So let's see.
Thank you so much, Milan. And Sia is a global project manager at Draper Startup House. They have scaled up immensely, and we have tagged along with them. So we have also grown little less than them, but we have also grown with them. If you can briefly introduce yourself and Draper Startup House.
All right. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet all of you. And so far, it's super inspiring to hear from all the founders. Yeah, I'm from Draper Startup House as a project manager, and I actually found out about the space back in 2018. So we're turning 3 this year. We actually started out in Singapore, and we have currently 10 locations around the world. In the past, we used to be known for us being an accommodation space for traveling entrepreneurs. The idea spanned out from Vikram, the founder, with the idea that, in a hostel space, a lot of people, there's a lot of ideas that's happening. And also at the same time, it's precisely because of the small areas that force people to have an exchange of conversations of ideas. And that actually happened when he was backpacking. And then eventually he came out with this idea of like, why not do that, but in entrepreneurial version where that collision of ideas could create startups. And with that, because we are on a mission of like, by 2030, we want to enable 1 million entrepreneurs. So far, we've seen quite a few people come in through our space in the last 3 years across all the 10 locations and working on ideas that, can be scaled. And also at the same time, with the entrepreneurs that have stayed with us, some of them are actually looking for funding, especially, people coming into Singapore. And a lot of the times they need, maybe help in recognizing the accelerators here, what the startup ecosystem is like. So that's pretty much what we do. Our business thrives very much on human connections and the community that we've built. But because of COVID this year, there's been a bit of a challenge for us that we tried to overcome, as well as a lot of quite a number of pivots as well. Because, for example, like hospitality has been has been hit quite a bit. So one of the first things that we had to do was shift our offline community online, and from there make sure that as much people that we can stay in touch with and stay connected with, we want to make sure that they feel supported throughout as well. And surprisingly, like during this period of time, while the rest of the world seems a bit sleepy or like a bit restless from the Zoom fatigue that's going on, we've still managed to connect 560 plus startups to investors. And that's because we managed to launch like Dripasap House Ventures, which has always been something that we've been doing casually, kind of like, informal introductions here and there. And then from there, we just made it official this year in May to start the Dripasap House Ventures. And also because we've got 10 locations right now with people coming through, just that, travel is not really allowed at this point of time. We are focusing more on the local entrepreneurs, local community, because at the end of the day, it's still back to the idea of human connections. And so from there, we've also turned our spaces into a bit of micro campus where, people can come into our space and still continue to learn, especially for entrepreneurs who are, not sure if they're like suffering from burnout from the corporate world, how do they start a startup? And yeah, so that's what we try and have to do. And at the end of the day, it's back to the idea of, community, connect, inspire, and empower.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sia. And another thing, like the Singapore ecosystem is great. So a lot of people who haven't been there and want to go there, probably some people will feel go to Changi Airport and somebody will give you money and everything. so in terms of raising funds, scaling up business, what happened with you? Dhruv, you raised funds. So was it easy? You have to reach out to more people. What was that story?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one. It's also because I think, definitely, I think one standard rule, because now we've closed 2 rounds of funding, right? And we just closed our Series A, which was quite a sizable Series A, at least for this part of the world. I think you definitely have to reach out to more people. I think that is quite a standard. I think every entrepreneur will tell you that. But I would also urge on one side, and at least on my personal opinion, is that, you probably should not think of fundraising as just one round and it's done kind of a thing, even though it feels like a massive uphill battle and it feels like, let's just get this out of the way. The reality is that, when you get these investors on board, especially for sizable rounds and all, more often than not, they will become like your partners, right? And it is like a marriage, right? And the reality is, at least before you get married, you should feel good about it, if you know what I mean, right? What happens after is probably out of your control in some ways. But given that, if most of the VCs traditionally have existing investments, it's actually very easy to reach out to fellow founders and understand from them actually how to deal with them. Are they reasonable or not, right? And this also gets a lot discovered during your interactions, because anyone who's close around understands a lot of it's a few months process with up and down in terms of commercials and so on and so forth. So I think definitely reach out to as many people, but also see what kind of investor fits your boat well. I personally don't believe in a spray and pray go to 500 people and mass blast. I think having focused reach out is very important. If you can actually do it through some of your networks or your contacts, whether it's existing investors, existing friends. I mean, something as simple as going on LinkedIn and see how many mutual friends you have, and finding a mutual friend who can probably make the connect. It does take time. It's honestly, I think it does take time, and but I think that focus reach out, at least gets you much quality interactions where even if you don't get investors, you get better prepared for the next conversation, as the case might be. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, in our story at least, we went out fundraising in March, right, where it was still like the early phases of COVID, and people thought, oh, we'll get over it. So it was actually terrible because a lot of people, I mean, they spoke, they're like, oh, great, your numbers are great, the business is great, but our boss has told us to go on a 3-month holiday, right? So it was actually it was, I think those 3-4 months were very, very harsh because we were having very good conversations. And, we've had like these leading VCs say, hey, this was normal time, we would have invested, but now, the benchmark itself has moved much higher, right? So I think my recent experience probably is not the fair. I want to believe it probably might be easier now that as our people are getting more, acceptable to the norm of, we will live in this world of Zoom calls, and, the show will go on. And at least places like Singapore, as you know, they've promised like vaccine for everyone across the next year, and, the cases are very low and all. But I would say that, it's obviously something that, you have to do. And I think the second advice I would have is that don't limit yourself regionally. I think it's great to be in the region you are, but sometimes, you might find more people who understand your model or what you're trying to build, who are outside our region. And in our case, like our lead investor is actually one of a leading global firm based out of New York, which had never really invested in Asia, but they have backed some of the biggest fintech companies like N26 in Europe or TransferWise, as some of you might have used, etc. But I think for them, they were looking for an opportunity, and we were looking for someone who understands the space. And sometimes you might not get it in the region, and being part of this fund. Even I remember with Growthers, right, which was in India. The early people who believed in this model were not Indian VCs, right? I mean, it was eventually Sequoia and Tiger Global from New York, and then SoftBank and DST, which invested. And I think now the ecosystem has matured more in India, where a lot of the local VCs will be happy to write big size checks and all, at least till Series A and Series B level, right? I think generally in Singapore, I think that is still something that is getting addressed. There are still not many high quality Series B kind of funded companies. I think some are just getting Series A. So I think if you're seed or early Series A, I think the Singapore ecosystem is a lot we can rely on. But if you're going beyond that, I think if you're raising something which is north of $10 million, I think, it is still very, very limited. And I would strongly suggest to, look out on a more regional/global outlook.
Yeah, awesome. And Tulika, the business you are in is one of the biggest pain point of consumers. So consumers would be interested in your offering, but what kind of challenges you face when you are now scaling up, and how do you go about solving them?
Sure. I mean, look, we have a two-sided marketplace, right? On one side, we have, millions of job seekers, right? And we provide a full journey for these job seekers and automated support and so on via algorithms to these job seekers. And the other side, we have employers who are looking to hire this talent. Now, actually, in such situations, you ideally want both sides to be active. And as we know this year, I think hiring the floor fell away in February, March. So we had a lot of our customers are startups, mid-sized firms in the region. We have some large firms, but lots of startups suddenly started preserving cash, laying off teams, forget actually hiring. So that sort of just fell through. So that's been a challenge, I think, especially in Q2 and Q3. We definitely see things picking up coming into Q4, but predominantly for planning next year. Now, in those challenges, I think, there are massive opportunities. And looking back, it's been traumatic to deal with that as a hiring startup. And it's been phenomenal because we've learned so much, and it has helped us really hone in with laser focus on opportunities between those challenges. So number one, I think we really focused on making that offering so compelling that, hiring, especially HR tech, is a very competitive space. There are lots and lots of small startups. There are lots of traditional players. So making it so compelling that if someone tried it, they'd seriously, and it's typically a late adopter type of market when you're dealing with HR. So if they tried it, they really felt compelled to continue using it and buying it. So that's one thing. The second thing we realized very quickly is when a market falls away, you can't say bye to people. You have these customers, it's a SaaS product, right? They're on a subscription plan. If you don't have some way to retain them on something, right? And you say bye, to say hi all over again is going to be like starting from scratch. So we introduced some basic free plans for companies to just, stay on, and I call it, putting our relationship on pause for a while, but continue to nurture them so that, and we're finding that as hiring is picking up, because we've had this 9-month long relationship, we're more ready for deeper commitment as we go into 2021. So that's another opportunity that we found. Yeah.
And Anupama, you mentioned about Slicer, and you had another partners also. So how did you go about finding those initial customers who will believe in your vision?
So I think finding the initial customers was not so much of a problem because we were from the business, and because my husband Bikash runs integrated retail, and they also had existing customer relationships. So I think when customers are buying into your product, they actually look at you, right? So if they think that, okay, you have the domain experience and you show them a product which they get it the moment they see it, they understand that you understand their problems. And that's where Slicer came from, right? Because I was leading sales analytics and business intelligence in the region. And I saw this gap as well as Bikash, that his customers were struggling. And, on Excel, everything looks good, right? But the moment you make add a zero here and there, it can make a lot of difference in the working capital required when you're purchasing fashion garments. And if it's a wrong kind of product, then you're stuck with them and it really eats up all your margins for the season. So I think that understanding that we had of the operations really helped us to get the first few customers.
Awesome. And Milan, you mentioned that IVS is one of the largest player of its kind in the region. So how did you get there? Like you had some big ticket customers, or you had some partnerships. What was that happened that you were able to get there?
I think for me it was just very lucky. I just got helicoptered in by Peng and landed, and it was already all there. So no, I think the reason it worked really well for IVS. So it used to be called iVideo Smart. We just rebranded as IVS. So now we have a very nice URL. It's just ivs.tv if you want to check it out. But essentially, so it's a good question. So essentially, the reason why I think we're particularly successful in Southeast Asia is that we offer it's a bit difficult to understand without having the industry context, but there are some major global incumbent video players. Bright Cove, some of you might have heard, and JW Player would be the two largest probably independent video players. But their business model is subscription based. So you pay usually like per play, and you pay also for CDN, so for content delivery. So it's kind of expensive, right? So you might end up paying, including CDN, 50 cents or 40 cents per 1,000 video views as a publisher. So if you are Compass or India Times or whatever, any big publisher, you have to pay them, right? And then you have to make your money back with the ad. So you have fixed infrastructure costs, and ad revenues are very seasonal, right? So it's very different quarterly, and you guys, if you all market your businesses B2C, then you know the CPMs are going crazy up and down, and you don't have control over it. And so this is due to seasonality, due to market demand, because now it's all driven programmatically, and it's basically it's like a stock market, really, of ads. And so this is a problem, especially in Southeast Asia, and India will be the same thing, because CPMs are much lower here in these markets. So meaning that you as a publisher, you only receive about $1, $2 eCPM, so average revenue per 1,000 ad impressions. Whereas in a market like the US or Australia or Europe, you might be receiving $8 or $10. So it can literally be like 5 to 10x the earning potential, but based on the same infrastructure cost. So the business model of the Bright Coves and JW Players of the world is a very comfortable business model in the US or Europe, because it's easy for publishers to make their money back. Whereas in Southeast Asia, it's much harder. So their alternative has been YouTube, in fact, and also another French company called Dailymotion. Those are sort of our competitors. But the problem for publishers with a YouTube and Dailymotion is that they also have a .com B2C website. So if you're a Compass.com or Asia One or if you're any major publisher and you upload your videos you use the YouTube player on your website, that same video is also gonna appear on YouTube.com. So for example, if you're now searching for COVID vaccine and you're looking for videos, you might find a video from Compass or from a publisher, but when you click on it, it actually plays in YouTube, which means that the publisher is not making money from all the ads that are on the side of the page and so forth, and they're actually losing out. So we offer the same business model as YouTube, which is pure revenue share, zero cost for the publisher, and we take a chunkier revenue share naturally. But we serve the feature breadth of a Brightcove and or JW player with no cannibalization of pushing people to a B2C side, if that makes sense. So we kind of offer the best of both worlds, which is really, I think, a naturally great proposition to publishers in the region, because it basically takes out all the risk for them. And generally, we are also proving to provide better margins than they can make with any other player. So we actually we've been, most of these guys, I won't say names, but we plug customers away from them every week. We sign up new publishers, and it's not that difficult a sale. The harder one is YouTube, just because of the name, right? So like if a large publisher, you come to them, you tell them we make you more money than YouTube, they'll be like, are you sure? Right? So there's a lot of, and I think Dhruv made a good point earlier. It's I think a lot about, you know, networking, and the decision makers are often C-levels and big family-owned publishing companies, and so I spend actually quite a lot of my time LinkedIn stalking people and figuring out how can I, who do I know who might know them, who they might trust, so I can even, because the key is to get the meeting right with these guys, and then once they really listen to you, then usually it's actually a pretty easy sale here in the region. But I think the previous team already did a great job of that, and now what we're focusing on is really to monetize this extremely well.
Brilliant. Yeah. And Sia, Team Draper invested in Draper Startup House. That happened before COVID or after COVID?
Pardon?
The question is for Sia now. I'm moving on. Yeah.
So team actually, we closed the round just before COVID hit. So that was like January this year. We closed out, we got the funding of 3.5 million. And yeah, but then after that, I mean, no one really knew like COVID was gonna happen. We had a lot of plans on things that we wanted to, do for the year, like, international expansion, and not just that, but also in terms of services that we have lined up. But that kind of changed. But since then, I mean, like, I think by end of this year, because like I do understand, for us, we still have to show that we're doing something, and actually we've already done everything that we could, from like pulling a conference when COVID first hit, within 2 weeks, and getting like all the big speakers that we have in our network to just be able to share their input and provide that idea of hope and the capacity for entrepreneurs to continue going on. I think that's a spirit that we've shown that we've executed really, really well in. And after that, even in May, when we launched Ventures, we actually had a panel lined up as well to share about, not just about ourselves, but also the other entrepreneurial stories of entrepreneurs who actually had funding during COVID period. Because that's something that, a lot of people always think that, the capital market, there's like less capital in the market, and it's more and more difficult to get funding. So from the entrepreneurs who managed to do so, we took their input and shared it with the world. And from the investors who invested in startups, we also shared their input as well. And then since then, like, things have taken off a little bit. So that's how it is.
Awesome. And this question is in the context of the people who are not based in Singapore but want to do business in Singapore, or expand their business, or potentially move there. So Sia, according to you, what are the top 2-3 things they should really take care if they want to do well in Singapore? What those things could be?
Oh wow, that's a tough question. I think in terms of 2 or 3 things, probably like, kind of just understanding the ecosystem before coming over here. Because a lot of the times, entrepreneurs who came into Singapore, when we saw them, they are here like 4 or 5 days. And most of them, like, what they did right was that, they've lined themselves up with meetings of people who they want to meet. I mean, it's not super, like, cheap to stay in Singapore as well, for a lot of the entrepreneurs, or just generally people traveling in, especially and compared to the rest of the region as well. So like, I would say, understanding, like, when the world opens up again, like, understanding who are the people that you want to meet, and specifically targeting the accelerators or the incubators, if they, and knowing who exactly that they are looking for. But also at the same time, just making sure that they have that support as well. Because like being an entrepreneur is never an easy thing. A lot of the times, like so many of the entrepreneurs that we've met, they've always expressed that it's a lonely journey, especially for people who decide to take that leap, and the chances of failure is pretty high. But also at the same time, the more important part is really just being resilient. And like through COVID period, we've also seen like all the pivots that the startups that we've been in touch with from the start, what they've done. So I think that's, the whole idea is probably, just being able to switch and continuously grow from the experience. Yeah.
Awesome. So we want to do 10 bullet points that has come out from the discussion. So 2 points are covered. You need not repeat that. Milan, what are the top 2-3 points you want to recommend that, if you want to do well in Singapore, these are the things. Yes, Milan.
Sorry. I think Singapore is a great place for startups because of the ecosystem and the support. Now COVID makes it very tough to travel, which is annoying, I think, or is a problem for some businesses because it's obviously not the largest market in Southeast Asia. But we found that worked extremely well, even though we're all based here. We have some people actually in the markets. But I think some of the things in Singapore, if you're building a company here, is similarly to what Gia said. I think it depends on the stage, right? So if you're very early stage and you're just starting out, there's some great angel clubs here, and I think the angels here are generally pretty reasonable compared to some other markets. And of course, it's a super crowded VC scene. But I think back to what Dhruv said, it's about identifying the right ones and not wasting too much time on having hundreds of conversations. If you get 1 out of 20 interested, that's still a good result. But then you try and minimize the amount of people that you speak to. I guess building a net is a great place to build a network, for sure. And you get so much exposure to different industries, to different levels of seniority quite easily because it's a small place. Yeah, but I really like Singapore as a sort of hub, and I'm very excited to be able to travel again and actually go into the markets where we're making money, because it's kind of strange doing everything from at home for so long.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Milan. Anupama, what would be your advice to the people who want to do well in business in Singapore?
So I would say 2 points you said, right, Jatin? So I think the first point is that Singapore is expensive, right, to hire, build a team and keep it here. So don't try to have your entire team here. So definitely have virtual teams. And now COVID has shown us that we can do it very easily. So for us, right from the beginning, we had a bulk of our team in India, in Bangalore. Right, that's where all the development, the support, the customer success, operations, everything runs out of there. And here it's just we are the founders and a couple of employees. The second point that I would say is having Singapore. It's a great place, but it's still again a smaller market. So we definitely need to leverage, the region. So have a kind of a distribution or channel partners in all the countries around, and do that earlier. Right, so we did that slightly later, right? But I think doing it right from the beginning will help you get much more market share in all these markets, right? And also having culturally, conscious people in each of the countries. So if you have a local person, he understands Thailand much better than somebody sitting in Singapore. Or if you have a person in Indonesia, that person is fluent in the language, understands the market, can speak to them at their level of thinking, keeping the cultural context in mind as well. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you so much, Anupama. And Dhruv, what would be your 2-3 points?
I just have 1 point, which would be to listen to everyone who's said everything before me. So, I mean, they've already covered, I think, which is important. I think I was going to say what I think Anupama's point, right? That basically, I think Singapore, of course, at the end of the day, you have to remember it's a small market, right? No matter what you're doing, maybe for a SaaS product, because companies are based out of here, it probably makes sense. But especially if you're doing a B2C product, right? I mean, it can't be a one size fits all kind of setup. And the other point I would just say is like very, very consciously, and presumably most businesses that will get built now will have a significant technology component. It's very, very tricky to build tech talent in Singapore. not only is it limited and expensive, it's also you really can't like really scale in some ways, right? So sooner or later that will become constraints, and now as it's becoming acceptable, I know teams that are getting formed with engineering and tech teams based in India, in China, in Vietnam, in Philippines, and all these places, right? So like definitely you can't really build a tech team out here. So if you're going to build a tech startup, it has to be, this can be more, I guess, the regional base, maybe the headquarters, the core team might sit here, but the technology aspects has to be built outside Singapore in some ways.
Awesome. Tulika, you have a tough job because a lot of good points have been covered. What more you would want to add, or any 1 or 2 points?
I was worried I'd go last, so I have to kind of. I think lots of great points. A couple of things I would say is, number one, be very clear on why you want to set up in Singapore. Is it because what stakeholder are you trying to be close to? So is it because of access to capital? So is that your compelling reason, or is it access to customer? So it can't just be I believe it's not ideal to just be here for a lifestyle move, because very quickly, your lifestyle goes out of the window. You're working 24/7. So and if it makes more sense to be in a local market because you're closer to a customer, etc., do that instead. The second thing is, I've seen a lot of startups, and I think especially if you're a founder this year who has already structured their startup in another country and you're looking to move to Singapore, get great legal advice on how you recapitalize and set up your Singapore structure. I think that's something and do that sooner rather than later, because with more investors on board and more constraints on board, that can start becoming very, very tricky. So, so that's something I think, find good lawyers and sort that out, or understand the implications of that before you move.
Awesome. Last 40 minutes of this discussion. So one of the things we do at this panel is to have panelists ask questions to each other. So anyone would want to see any question you may want to ask other founders, or you can ask a specific question to a specific one.
I love to ask questions if that's.
And this is very important for me individually, because this helps me increase my question bank. So I am making alternate career as a moderator at events. So this helps me get better. Please ask.
Dhruv or any of you, I'll let you guys choose, okay? But if you were to go, right back to the start of your journey in founding your current startup, if you could go right at the back for 30 minutes and meet yourself, what would you tell yourself to do either differently or to focus on, or what's the advice you'd give yourself right at the beginning of the startup journey based on where you are today?
Yes. This is a very good question. Everybody should answer.
I would say that it's okay to be not okay. And in reality, I think many times, and it happens till date where, you're going through this all for the first time and you realize, oh shit, everything's breaking and oh, nothing's happening. And will this company last the next 3-4 months and all? But then you realize, that is some journey that everyone actually goes through. And that is actually the reason why we do what we do, right? Otherwise most of us would have taken up, conventional jobs, or most of us have left conventional jobs. So I think that, I definitely would go back, and even not even to the start, I would say even more recently, where, we probably over analyze the impact of things not working out, but not realizing that this is more about the journey than the destination. And by the way, I say all this, but I still struggle with it, right? So I'm trying to personally get better at it, to be very honest. But sometimes we also forget what has been achieved because there's so much else we want to achieve. So I think finding that balance and realizing that this is a part of the process, right? That the highs and lows. I think that I think would be the biggest advice I would give myself.
Awesome. Anupama?
Yeah. So I think what I would say, and like Dhruv, I think we're also doing the same. It's a constantly evolving journey, right? So what I would say to people is that don't work in a silo. So when you start something, you go to your investors and you go to the market, but then you're not out there in the community. So I really like what eChai has built up and Draper Startup House has built up, that it's a community, because when you hear from others, you get points and you're more out there, in the open, so you learn faster. So I would say be more out there, interact more with other people in the community. I think that really makes a difference, because one thing you learn or one thing you hear from someone can change the entire course of how you're going about building your business. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Awesome. Milan, you want
For
to?
creating this platform.
Thank you so much for joining. Milan, you want to answer this, or you want to ask a question? And Sia, you also.
No, I think it's a very good question from Tulika. For me, I think the biggest learning I've had in the whole entrepreneur journey is how important it is to be a good manager. And I think I was a pretty shitty manager in the beginning because I've never had any training or even aspirations to be a manager. So I actually hated it and ended up being quite bad at it, I think, in the beginning, and lost good people. And, so I think, like, if I could do anything different, I would. One thing I've learned, I think, which is the biggest learning, which, I mean, hindsight 2020, right? But I'm doing that now, is try to lead from the back. Try not to lead from the front, because you can't scale yourself, right? You can't scale your time. It's impossible. So I try to, I get involved operationally on like high risk matters with really, really important stakeholders that obviously that are really important for my business. But I make sure I have 2 hours every day where I do nothing. Well, where I sit on the couch and dream and think, and like solutions just come without trying, and I really let the team run the business. So I have my 3 reports, and I spend a fair bit of time with them, making sure that they're all aligned and that they all are working towards the same thing. It's so easy to get kind of lost, and the opportunity cost of that, of one of the CTO pushing in that direction, the chief revenue pushing in that direction, and then suddenly you realize actually they're not aligned, and somebody's been working on the wrong stuff. That's so much more costly than anything else. And I think if in my previous business, I was always on a plane, always in different countries, like 70% of the time. And I think I missed a lot of that. And now I really, I don't want to take the glory, like it's not the point. I think the point is that we win, and that we win big, and that we keep winning. And I think the best way to do that is to really enable the second layer in the management team, and being a great leader involves being a great manager. And I think being a great manager means to kind of step back and let the bosses of the departments, which usually sales and tech, right, and then maybe operations and marketing, let them lead the business, and play more the role of a coach to them, to kind of align them all, to make sure that they all agree with, and tease out their thoughts on where we should go. Don't try to like own the strategy completely by yourself. Let tease it out of them. Let them all kind of work together to collaboratively figure out what to do, and then let them do it. It's also much nicer for being okay more, because you end up having a little bit less of that pressure of feeling like all the weight is on your own shoulders. So I think that was a tough lesson for me, and but I'm so happy for having learned that, because it's made my life so much easier.
Awesome. Sia, you want to respond to that, or you want to ask a question to any one of the panelists?
So I don't really have anything to add on, because I think Dhruv, Anupama, and Tulika and Milan all raised really, really good points on, like, the part on it's okay to not be okay. Especially because I think one thing that for me, what I learned from Vikram, who's the founder of the company, during the COVID period especially, one thing that he told the whole team was, like, be very careful, take care of your mental health. That's the most important thing. And he really showed it to us as well, in terms of like ways that, if he wants to execute things, he kind of leads from the front. But by doing that, he kind of inspires everyone else to have that safe space, and try different things, and let different people in the team take ownership of that. So I think like that's one of the most beautiful, spontaneous things that comes out from our team. That also like kind of spread the positivity, and enable the rest of the people in the community as well to like grow together. And then in terms of questions, I think it's been a tough year for like entrepreneurs and people who have been on the front, leading the teams, and keeping everyone motivated. So I think I like to throw the question out as to how do you recharge, and not just recharge, but how do you find inspiration for you to be able to propel your dreams forward, during this challenging period?
Any one person can pick it up, because we want to finish on time, and I want to ask 2 more questions. Sia, who should answer this question?
Anupama?
Okay. So always just go back to the problem that you're solving, right? And to your end consumer or customer, because that's what will keep you motivated to see that you're removing some pain, you're feeling like a need, and what is the big impact of that, right? So if you can just focus your energy on that, that what is the difference that you're making in the world, right, of your customer, then you'll find the motivation.
Awesome. We want to do a rapid fire, so you can give one or two word answers to it. Which is your most favorite book, Tulika?
Fountainhead.
Dhruv? Book or a podcast?
Muted.
You have to unmute yourself.
I think everybody unmute yourself, right?
Dhruv, you'll have to unmute yourself. And yes, favorite book or a podcast?
It's called High Growth Handbook.
Okay. Anupama?
The Prophet by Khalil Gibran.
Milan?
It changes every month, especially the latest book I've read. But right now it's The $1 Trillion Coach, Bill Campbell.
It's a nice one.
Worth reading.
And Sia, your favorite book or a podcast?
Favorite book. So I just finished How Will You Measure Your Life? It was a very interesting book because it tells you about the economics perspective and places that in your personal life and how it's applicable. So very, very good book. Yeah. And the other one, got a second one here is Ogilvy's book, Confessions of an Advertising Man.
Awesome.
Right book as well.
And Sia, if everything happens the way you imagine it should be, what would Draper House be? Draper Startup House be?
Okay, so for Draper Startup House, I think if everything happens the way it would be, it's a bustling place for entrepreneurs to feel welcome as much as possible. There's conversations that's happening over happy hour, and not just conversations, but the ones where ideas are being exchanged, ideas of like a future that's beautiful, that's more livable, and that's better for the future generations.
Okay. And Milan, same question. If everything happens the way you imagine it would be, what would IVS be?
It depends when, but I think we want to dominate the Southeast Asia market and then APAC, expand to APAC over the next 2 years, and long term, yeah, be a top global video player, focusing on our niche. Don't have a very exciting answer. Yeah.
But pretty good one. Anupama?
I think all fashion companies would be making just the right amount of merchandise, right? And not having so much of wastage. We would have lesser wastage and be more conscious consumers, right? That's what I would say.
Awesome. And Dhruv?
I think if people start reassociating their relationship with money, which generally is more stressful than joy, if it can be as seamless as accessing Wi-Fi or switching on the bulb for electricity, something of that sort. So I think if we can do that, I think we've achieved our goal.
Awesome. Turika?
I think the word snap hunt will be used interchangeably with hiring. So, you'll say, have you snap hunted your software engineer yet? So, rather than saying you've hired, I think then we've done what we want to do.
Wow. And I like this question personally more. If Tulika, if you were to describe your entrepreneurial journey in one word, what would that word be?
Roller coaster.
Okay. So I have a plug. We do a series called Startup Roller Coaster, where we interview startup founders for 10-minute videos they talk about ups and downs about their business. Dhruv.
Yeah, man, the roller coaster word is taken. Now I have to think again from scratch, right? I would. Can I go a bit longer than one word, if that's fine? It's. I think I read somewhere it's about when you jump off a cliff and you build the plane on the way down, and that's exactly how I feel about it. So you're figuring out a lot. It gets along, but it's going to be okay, and you'll be fine basically. So.
Awesome. Anupama. Okay. Meanwhile she comes, Milan, if you were to describe your journey in one word, what would that word be?
Persistence.
Okay. Anupama, what would that one word be?
So I'm going to do a shameless hustle here, right? It's syzygy. So syzygy basically means where the sun, the moon, and the earth are aligned. And I put together this book earlier this year. And I think in one word, I would say that my journey is where my heart, mind, and soul is aligned. So yeah, syzygy.
Brilliant. And Sia?
Oops. I'd say it's been inspiring because I think like the work connotes a lot of positivity, and throughout the whole year, it's been ups and downs. But at the end of the day, it's always positive.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. We are in the last minute. We started exactly on time and finishing exactly on time. And thank you so much, Vadhwani Foundation team, TIP Nitro team, for being part of this thing. And all the awesome participants, you can go to Twitter, tell us about what you liked, and we'll have a 1 hour break. And then we'll have startup growth stories from Philippines. So we have very interesting sessions coming up. And Tulika, Dhruv, Anupama, Milan, and Sia, thank you so much for accepting the invite and candidly sharing about your experiences.